We now have a session with Mr. Sanjay Sehgal, Chairman and CEO of MSys Technologies. He is a multifaceted person donning several hats: a technology entrepreneur, a global businessman, startup advisor, keynote speaker, philanthropist, meditation instructor, and more. He will be interviewed on the theme of service and how we can come together through service and volunteerism. Interviewing him is Mamta Ventak, who is also a dedicated heartfulness trainer and facilitator. She is also a social media influencer, especially in the area of mental health and wellness. An Ohio native, Mamta graduated from Wright State University in 2014 with a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies and a minor in Spanish. Mamta's 2016 TEDx presentation, which has been viewed over 2 million times, utilizes the theme of interaction to discuss the application of meditation to internal and external development. Over to you, Mamta and Mr. Sanjay Sehgal.
Thanks, Akshayita, for such a wonderful introduction.
Mamta, I think you're on mute. If you could just unmute yourself.
Is everyone able to hear me now?
You're audible now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that great introduction. Sanjay Uncle, it's nice to see you.
Nice seeing you too, Mamata.
To everybody who is tuning in at home, thank you so much for joining us, not just for this particular session, but for Youth 2.0. It's been fun getting to know so many of you, to see so many of you tuning in. We're really glad to have you as a part of this community. Sanjay Uncle, I always love having an opportunity to chat with you, but I especially love having the chance to speak with you in this capacity. You are one of the hardest working people I know, and that dedication shines through not just in your impressive bio and in your resume, but through your family and through the work that you do with the Heartfulness Institute and our service-driven initiatives. I think that hard work is something that so many of us are inspired by. So I'm glad for an opportunity to pick your brain more, to get to know more about how you got so involved in all of this, and thoughts and advice that you have to share with everybody who's watching today.
Sure, looking forward to it.
Great. Now, obviously, we are in a very unique situation in the world right now. There is a bit of a global pandemic going on. And of course, everyone's lives are incredibly disrupted by the coronavirus, no matter how you slice it. But there's a lot of positive going on in the world right now, too. The bright side of all of this has been able to see the way that the world has stepped up for one another, to see the way that people are volunteering to make sure that their friends, their neighbors, and complete strangers are taken care of. Of course, today we are talking about the ecosystem of service, which I think is incredibly critical, especially now more than ever. Do you have a specific moment of volunteerism or a specific experience that you've had that stands out to you?
Sure. There is a saying, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? I mean, I don't know whether you guys have heard this or not. I mean, I'm showing my age by coming up with some old sayings. But to me, it always meant all work and no volunteering makes Jack a dull boy. To me, something that I had read in early parts of my journey in heartfulness, where I think in one of the talks of or writings of Babuji, where he said that for us, that there is no charity, it's duty. Helping a fellow human being is a duty. And I remember, I have been meditating for over 30 years now. And I remember that really stuck with me early part of my, my practice. And I remember I mentioned it multiple times, and I don't have to remind myself of that now, because I feel that few things over time become part of you, and that is now part of me. That to me, volunteering is not a separate activity. It is part of life, and it is not even volunteering. It is like breathing. It becomes a natural part of you. Then you don't think, oh, now this is my work, this is my volunteering. I often joke about this. I have 6 email addresses and they all come to one mailbox. So there is no separation between this is work, this is family, this is this, right? Yesterday I was while on an evening walk with my wife, we were talking about some talks from yesterday's event. Wonderful session, by the way. All youth have done wonderful job, and I'm very happy and elated to be part of this. And yesterday I was discussing with her, sharing with her the talk of Mr. Shiv Khemkaji. Very good person and very good talk. And I think when he was talking about his bio and his life, and then how he had traveled all over the world, and I mean, he studied in US, first in India, then in US, and he went to Russia and Brazil and all that. And I was just sharing with my wife. I think we didn't get to do that. I mean, I was in India, then came to US, and 30 years I've been here now. But then I said, well, I don't feel the need for it, because in Heartfulness itself, we meet people with such diverse backgrounds, from country, from profession, from skill set and all. I never felt the need that I have to now try Brazil or try Russia or try Europe. I mean, and of course we got to travel as tourists all over the world. But I think that, to me, the thing that you asked, what part of volunteerism, one is that treating it as part of my life, and the second is being able to associate myself with so many different people over my life. It has been really fulfilling.
That's lovely. That's something that I'm starting to realize for myself too, as I become more entrenched with volunteering within the Heartfulness Institute. And that's something that's been carried with me even from a young age. I remember being in high school or in college or applying for college, and having volunteerism or some sort of service activity was such a critical part of our resumes in order to get us into college. Why do you think volunteering and doing service-based work is so important for our young adults and for our young generation, especially with everything that's going on right now with the pandemic?
See, and as you know, as heartfulness trainers, we also get to work with so many people to help them with their meditation sessions. And I think that one day this thought had occurred to me that what is so unique about the work we do? You know, not every time you get to build a house for someone or feed people and all, but we are sitting here and giving a meditation session, conducting a meditation session for somebody. I felt the biggest thing, which is common across all these different service opportunities or service projects, is that it takes you away from thinking about yourself to thinking about others. You know, early days of my childhood, I remember getting up in the morning and my grandparents around me, and I'm just some memories of that time, and they'll always be talking about the food and what is there for lunch and dinner and this and that. And here we get up and we talk about whom we have to give session today, right? And let's see if we could conduct more of these with some more people, or we can do some for school, from some corporation. So I think our life, or and I'm so glad when you mentioned about high school, because that is the founding time for all of you to get that sense that there is more to life than just your life. And you will find that many psychologists have said that most of the mental health problems, which is really rampant now among youth, right? Not just that adults don't have it, but especially among youth, right? And that is mainly because today's the digital world has made us more focused on ourselves. We're more focused on how many likes we get and how many this we get or that we get. So that keeps our attention more on ourselves rather than others. I think if the strong base of volunteering in high school, it's a wonderful thing. Everyone must do.
I'm really glad that it was something that I did so copiously when I was in high school. It was at first something that my parents really pushed me to do, but then more and more it became something that I loved to do. And I think the most critical value that it taught me was this concept of empathy, which is much needed at any point in time, in any point in life. And I think that really builds into this concept of an ecosystem of service, which is something that's been talked a lot over the last couple of days. I look at this concept as a method to create community through service and compassion. How would you define it?
That's a wonderful way to describe it. And I just remembered a shloka from Gita. I don't know how many I know in US is, we are not taught Gita, but there's a Indian book, it's called Gita, Bhagavad Gita, right? And there's Lord Krishna there. It's a wonderful shloka. I like to quote that. I don't know Sanskrit very well, but I'll just translate that in English. He said, "There is no one who can remain without action even for a moment. Indeed, all beings are compelled to act by their qualities born of material nature." I'll read it again. There is no one who can remain without action even for a moment. Even Lord Krishna acknowledges that our minds are very active. So we have to do something. We have to act. That is our nature. All beings are compelled to act by their qualities born of material nature. So we all have certain qualities in each one of us. And with those qualities, if we contribute to this ecosystem of service, right, I think this world will become a much better place. To me, a lot has been talked about ecosystem of startups. I mean, I think if you read my bios, I have done 3-4 startups when I was, you guys' age, and now I advise many startups. And we talk a lot about startup ecosystem. You have the funding, you have the idea, you have the execution, you have this, you have a lawyer, you have a CPA, a patent lawyer, and all that. And we normally, as part of our advice, we put all that together. To me, in service now, there is a greater need than ever for an ecosystem of service where you have, again, similar to that, a new value system as the highest thing. A new value system is very important where you can trust each other. It's opposite of startup. In startup, we say, at least now, I feel that even that is changing now, but that is topic for another webcast or something. But the time when we used to do, it used to be cutthroat competition between the founder of startups. But I find in the ecosystem of service, what we need is brotherhood, a high level of trust, and a common pool of resources that people can drop on, opportunities, funding, right? And willingness to help each other. Like through this Youth 2.0, I was associated talking to some youth earlier, and what I learned was how various NGOs came forward to assist in organizing this in just very short period of time. I mean, it was all organized in 2-3 days, and mainly because they had a trust and they saw the potential in being able to help. Because only through helping we will all grow. And I think at the end of it, if we all realize that main purpose of all this is not that what we have gained for ourselves, but how much we have given to others. And that if that motto remains, I think this ecosystem will thrive. To me, from a transactional based ecosystem, which is there in startups that I also am part of, that's my day job, to a transformational ecosystem. That's how I would like to summarize it.
That is a beautiful response. Thank you for sharing that. Just a couple of follow-up questions on that. So if people are interested in finding an ecosystem that is fit for them, there are multiple tracks of volunteerism that people can take, whether it be through health or education. How would you encourage them to find those? And then simultaneously, how would you encourage people to create their own ecosystems of service, similar to what you did from a startup mentality? What are the steps that you would encourage people to take, not only to create those, but then to make sure it's as inclusive as possible?
See, the most important thing, as we also say in Heartfulness, is willingness. If willingness is there, I think you will find your way. But to really enumerate some steps, I like to say there are 3 S's. I'm not talking about my name. That is also S. But 3 S's are, Sadhana, Satsang and Seva. Your own practice, first you work on yourself. Before you save a drowning man, you can learn swimming yourself. So when we talk about sadhana, we are not just talking about just heartfulness practice, but get a skill that will allow you to help others, whether it be meditation or it be something. And satsang to me is not just again group meditation where you're sitting and listening to somebody. It is more about mentoring. It's about being part of a group which is acting out of selfless service, as we talked about. And third is your own action, that is seva. So remember that sadhana, satsang, and seva, they are needed not only for your spiritual growth, but also for becoming a good volunteer. And there are so many things, especially in today's time, when the world over, I mean, I think the positive that has come out of Corona or this crisis that we are all facing is the camaraderie between people and how people are coming together to help each other. It is wonderful to see. I mean, how countries are helping each other, and that whole old talk of nationalism, right? And now some people are saying that with lockdown of borders, that nationalism will come back and all that. I don't agree with that. I think more than ever, people have realized that no one is safe till everyone is safe. And you help others so that you are also helped and you are safer. And this is the time for everyone. In fact, one of the recent talks, Daji had talked about, our spiritual guide, that prayer is not enough. He said, this time is not just enough for you to sit at home and meditate and pray. It's time to act. He said, we have to become the serving citizens of the world. And to me, it is a call to all the youth, or not only youth, but everyone. And if you are willing to act, you will find many opportunities to help people. And no work is small. It's not that, oh, I have to only give money, I have to only give sitting, or I have to, people are needed even to just feed others, even to cook, even to wash dishes, right? Now by following, of course, all the norms of social distancing and protecting yourself, but it is very important. So I think they can start by contacting us, contacting any NGO in their neighborhood, and just if they have a group of friends, they can contact you, they can form a team to offer their help. And there are a lot of people who are looking for such help in today's time. But remember what you need to do. Again, I'll go back to those 3 S's, right? Sadhana, Seva, Sadhana, Satsang, and Seva.
That's great. Speaking of us, the Heartfulness Institute is a nonprofit organization that supports a number of wellness-based programs around the world, and all of those are volunteer-driven. Can you highlight some of the global initiatives that are happening right now?
Sure. And as I think many of you who have known me or known Heartfulness for years, and we are last few years have been, we have made a lot of, I would say, foray into, this volunteer activities all over the world. I just like to mention a conversation I had with Daji not too long ago. And we were just both walking, in his usual evening walks. I was accompanying him in Kanha. And I said, I think a few years ago, we were only focused on, primarily spiritual work. The last few years, we have really, gone out to help society or help community in a big way. And I said, when did you have this vision that we should do this? He said, it's not my job to have vision. It's my job to execute or wait for that vision to unfold. See that vision unfold. See what is needed and do the required work. And that is very important lesson, and that's why I'm saying that, because as we have seen the need, I think we could have done a lot more or a lot less, but I think we have done a lot of things as and where we saw the need in the last few years. The most important need Heartfulness Institute and Heartfulness Education Trust saw were in the field of education. We felt that youth and our children and youth are going to be the foundation of future society. Not that adults are not important, but I mean, of course, we most of our work all these years have been on adults. I mean, we had over 18 years only. I mean, you have to cross 18 years to be able to meditate. But we were not paying enough attention to the children and youth, and that's what Daji felt. And I think our major initiative, where we have helped millions of school children, millions of college children, college youth, and in really dealing with themselves, life skills. And then there are a lot of NGOs which feed them. There are a lot of NGOs which educate them, but I think we are perhaps one of the few which teaches them value of life, which teaches them importance of purpose in life, give them the kind of life skills that only few of us can give. And that has been very well received. So education program has been at the forefront. And of course, environment. Those of you who have been to our international headquarters in Hyderabad, you know that when once a barren land has become, we call it, oasis of peace, or forest of peace. uh, as the name says, Shanti Vannam, right? And it is, I mean, we have planted over 600,000 trees there, and that is not just, we have plantation has not just been limited to Ghana, but all over the world. And then some sanitation projects. And in today's time, when so many migrant workers all over the world are unsure of their daily meals, all our kitchens at all the retreat centers have been converted into kitchens for feeding migrant workers. Almost every ashram that I know in India, at least I can say, where their meals are being cooked on a daily basis for thousands of people and being taken to places where these people who are not unsure of their daily work are being fed. In US, we are doing more through other NGOs because we have less resources to be able to participate directly in such things, including medical supplies in some cases. But most important to me is emotional and spiritual support. That a network of 100,000 volunteers that we have world over, that Daji has motivated to provide, to be available, to provide emotional and spiritual support. And I'm sure it is, I see your social media channels too, and I think how many people are asking for sessions these days. I mean, all of a sudden there's a lot more because people are sitting at home and they feel the need for this. Loneliness and fear has, I mean, there is a coronavirus pandemic, and then we have the fear and loneliness pandemic, right? And I think we are rightly suited to provide that help. So it is something that more people come forward, more youth. If you're not a trainer, that you cannot provide spiritual support, be ready to provide emotional support. Willingness is important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been incredible to see the way that so many heartfulness trainers and volunteers have stepped up during this time in so many different capacities, and especially in that emotional and spiritual support. The way that people are doing more meditation sessions remotely, the way that we've adjusted in order to adjust with the times. It's been lovely to see how that's been happening. And then on the flip side of that, it's been great to see more and more people wanting to get involved with the Heartfulness Institute because of that. Now, I know there are a lot of youth who have phenomenal ideas that we could bring to the forefront. How do you see the Heartfulness Institute being a vehicle of support for youth and for any of their ideas and their initiatives?
Simple is that, if they can just send an email to ideas@heartfulness.org with their ideas. I didn't come up with it. It has been there, by the way. That email has been their email address. So I mean, that's they're welcome to send their ideas. But more than ideas, we need their willingness to come forward to help, right? And I think if any project that we feel we are able to do, I mean, Heartfulness is I would say is a perfect place, which is for to provide an ecosystem of transformational services, right? We were talking about ecosystem. I mean, Heartfulness, you have everything. I mean, everything Heartfulness does, we don't charge money, and you all know that. And I think that's perhaps one of the only organization with no revenue model. I like to joke about it that way, because in startup world, I say, oh, what is your revenue model? What is your barrier to entry? Here we talk about there is no revenue model, so it's very simple. If an idea helps a lot of people, and we feel we are rightly suited for that, we will definitely. I'm sure Daji will definitely take it up. You know, his motto or his vision or his goal has been, as he said, visions are not for him to have. Visions are coming from above, but his goal has been to really provide help, this kind of assistance, to every single human being on earth. He said, if not in this life, in some other life, people would need this. It is needed. And now we are finding more than ever, it is needed. So I think they can start with that. But if they are willing, I'm sure they are in touch with others who are involved with various projects. We are continuing to do more sessions for corporates, sessions for universities, sessions for schools, sessions for, except for areas which requires us to go to some place, right? I know villages, I mean, we are now focusing more on providing food and rations, food supplies to those places. But almost every connect, as we called it, we've had, they have been active and they're providing services in every possible way. If I can tell you, our Zoom accounts are most active Zoom accounts in the world. I think I'll not be boasting. I mean, it is people are being made. People are making themselves available all the time to help.
Yeah, that is not surprising to me at all. I would not be surprised if we are taking over Zoom right now with the number of things and initiatives and people we've got on board, which is wonderful. We've got a few questions coming in from our viewers, so I wanted to take some time to address those. We have a question from Pooja Soni. What's the thing called self-service? How to go about realizing a higher sense of self and to move to a higher realm?
I think, Pooja, a wonderful question. Remember, I mentioned about 3 S's: Sadhana, Satsang, and Seva. I think sadhana is the one, if one does practice intensely, diligently, consistently, you will find that. That is the self-service. I think this is a lesson also from Heartfulness, that first you help yourself. I think it's always been example we often have given is that you're in an aircraft and they always give you the instruction before you put this oxygen mask on your child. First you do it on yourself, right? First you help yourself, and that's where the sadhana, and in our case it is meditation. Meditation is a very important part of realizing your self-worth, helping yourself. Self-service starts from that, then comes everything else. But service by itself can also give you, you will feel valued if you're serving others and you're part of a community and all that. But I think I will advise first start with a sadhana, a diligent sadhana, then get involved with mentoring, that is satsang, and then third is seva.
That's the third time I've heard the oxygen mask metaphor this week, so I'm thinking that I've needed to hear it a bunch of times as a reminder for myself. So that's a great answer. We have another question from Kushi Devyani. Many times we are driven to volunteer innately, but schools and universities have simply made it mandatory, which makes us sort of lose interest. In a way, in one's head, it simply loses the value it once had. How do we overcome this?
I think if you are, that is not end of the road. I mean, if that's not the only place where you can volunteer, and you're right, and at times we are pushed, and same thing happens with sadhana. I have seen, and as you know, I've associated with many of you, young folks, and if the parents, insist on young people meditating, and they then, they rebel. I think the lesson for us adults has been, let you guys figure out in your own way. So I think one thing I would like to say is, I'm sure you figure it out yourself, but only advice I can give you is that don't get turned off by that, and that the school is insisting that you should do it. And that's, I mean, they are doing what they know best. I'm sorry to say. I wish we come to realization, everyone comes to realization, that it has to become part of our second nature. Like Babuji had said, it has to become our duty. It has to become part of our life. If we all realize that, then we don't have to wait for somebody to tell us, hey, you have to do this. We'll automatically get up and say, hey, whom can I help today?
Yeah, that's so true. So another question is, how can we align with Heartfulness initiatives? Is it necessary to be a Heartfulness member to align with our outreach programs?
Not necessary. I think Heartfulness, we often say that, it's really not an organization. It is a group of heartful people coming together. So it's not necessary for to be member of Heartfulness. It's not necessary for you to even practice Heartfulness. If you are heartful, if your heart is moved to help others, please come forward, contact any one of us. And I think we're looking for all the help that we can get. And hopefully through helping others, you will transform yourself. And that will be the biggest help to yourself, talking about self-service.
Yes. We have a few more questions, but we also have a really lovely comment. Someone said it touched the heart when he said now he sits and thinks about whom he has to give meditation session for today. So that message, I think there was someone who wanted that to be passed on to you.
Sure.
Yeah, it was lovely to hear. As teenagers, what can we do to help the poor or the disadvantaged?
I remember Chariji, our second master that many of us had associated for a very long time with. He used to say that whenever you want to help from the highest ability that one has. And I think that's very important because often people, that is not to belittle, let's say, the smaller task that one has in front of it to do. But I think if more of us, if those who have money are able to help the poor, and especially in such times, because it's needed. Now, at times I have seen there are a lot of people volunteer to help, but in this whole ecosystem, we don't have enough money. Now, for example, in this food thing right now, food projects we are doing, we would have done about 1 million meals in India so far. And all the fund, perhaps many of you know that we have a core fund, we call it Heartfulness Core Fund, that is COVID relief fund. And I think people generously donated towards that. And but this, as a lockdown is extending and this problem seems like it's not going to end anytime soon, so more money will be needed. So find an NGO like ours. I'm just saying we are one of them, and there are many that you can align yourself with, and you can help them. We are helping. NGOs like us are helping. There is something once Daji had told me that when you give more, more you give and more you get. That when you give more than what we get, soon there would be time you will get more than you give, right? And I think it's always comes back. I think Daji's life himself, many of you who known him when he was in the early part of his career, when he was still working, he never told me this, but I heard from others who knew him during those times that every time he would get some extra cash, he will just donate it, and he used to say, it'll come, more will come, or it has come for me to give. I'm just being merely a conduit, So if you have a feeling like that, service becomes natural to you.
That's great. Another question, are funds important in doing a volunteering service to the larger community?
Funds.
Funds, yes.
Yeah, I think I just mentioned, I mean, they are important, but more than funds is your willingness. It's always that, because if you are willing, funds will come. I mean, like I just mentioned, Daji had said, I mean, every time he needed, something, it came to him. But I mean, willingness for you to make serving others your second nature, that is important. That don't treat service as a separate project that I have to do, that I want to be involved in this. That is who you are. That's what Babuji said, as a human being, how else can you exist? Now, I think, if you think about this, I'm sorry to say this, coronavirus has come to remind us of that. It just occurred to me, no one is safe till everyone is safe. So just if you are safe sitting at home, you're not safe till you help others to become safe. I'm just taking that as an example, but that extends to everything. Today, if you are, you're getting food because somebody is driving, at least in US, we are able to get this mail order, all the groceries via mail order. Somebody is driving 24 hours, to deliver that to you. And think about his safety. Think about helping him. I mean, help is, and actually that's something, we were just talking about that in our house, that every time we get a lot of packages get delivered, that we should keep some thank you notes and gifts for them too. They will really appreciate that.
That's a really nice thought. It's not something that I had thought of, so I appreciate you saying that. That's true. There are a lot of people right now who are doing so much of the back work that we don't necessarily see or acknowledge during non-pandemic times. So it's important to make sure that they're feeling appreciated and cared for right now. We only have a few minutes, so I want to make sure that we take a couple of more questions. How can we inculcate unity through differences on a world level? Many times we're able to convince people to bridge the difference, and the result of that is a united effort. So how can we make sure that we bridge that gap and make sure there is unity in our efforts?
Start with yourself. Right?
That seems to be a common theme.
Yeah. I mean, what else?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think there's some video playing that it begins with you, right? Right. So I think it's this unity is if we are at times we have to give in, or we have to let go of, what we may be thinking to become part of something that somebody else has thought about, right? It's not my way or highway. That kind of mentality will never work, right? And when as I said, in my startup world, it's opposite. We say that, oh, you have to be driven, you have to be a strong achiever, you have to be type A, right? But in service, you have to think about others first, right? And I will not then bother much about unity. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm going to take another question. Is there any possibility or way that volunteering can be brought up at a macro level, like exposure in this society? Can it be a beginning of curbing some grave problems like poverty, illiteracy, brotherhood, even at some small level? Something is always more than nothing. Sorry, I read that last part incorrectly.
Sure, and I think that's it is happening, and it's of course it should be done, must be done. More is needed than what is happening. We see that all around. I mean, I often used to wonder when I got more involved with some of the heartfulness work in India. I realized that there are so many NGOs, but at the same time, the problem that all the NGOs are trying to solve is much bigger than all of them put together. And I think that the problem that we are finding is like, at every level. I mean, some people are poor, some people are have mental health problems. Some people don't have food. Some people need education. Some people. So I think it's kind of problems are endless. So I think more people willing to come forward to help more at the macro level, it must be brought out. That's, I think in US, that's why schools are making it mandatory to do that for you. Actually, I think that's the previous question. One reason they are hoping that they'll inculcate that feeling, that service attitude in more youngsters, so that tomorrow's adults will have more of that. I think our time is up. Are we going to set up some mentee questions quickly, or?
I do think our time is up, so I'm not sure we have space for that. But I do want to quickly say thank you to everyone who submitted questions. Those were all very thoughtful and lovely. And Sanjay and Cole, thank you for taking the time to talk about your experience, to answer everyone's questions, to provide more insights on the Heartfulness Institute and what we're doing on this end, and just to share your insights and experience with all of us today. It's been great chatting with you.
Likewise, as I said, remember the 3 S's, and remember, more you give and more you get. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Talking to you all.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Thanks, Mamta, for leading the conversation.